Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Friday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you as we set the scene for pretty big push to finish the recruiting season by Coach Rule and his staff. We'll get you the updates where the staff is at. Maybe they're waving at my mother, or where Coach Rule has been. Numbers to get in today on Hail Varsity Radio. Can dial up 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can watch the show. Different ways to do that. Check us out with Hail Varsity's YouTube channel. Also on Facebook and Twitter with ESPN Lincoln. And can always stream the show and watch live on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Check that out. Give that a follow. Catch Coffee and Cream in the Morning with Damon and Andrew, 7 to 9 weekdays on ESPN Omaha, 590 ESPN Lincoln. Catch us on the way in and on the way home. Can email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com. So, where is Nebraska's staff? You've probably seen on social media, and we'll check in with Brady Oltmans in a little bit, about an hour or so from now, and get his take on Nebraska's continued, dare I say, dogged pursuit of one Dylan Raiola. Jacob Padilla with us in 20 minutes. The Pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, will be with us. In my hot little hands, the newest issue, if you're watching, of the Hail Varsity magazine is out. Road Rules, or Rules Road. Get that subscription today, hailvarsity.com/offer. Digital and print, you love it. Elijah, it seems like you and I are the only two folks not wanting to be in Arizona, but most of the staff, all of the staff except Coach Rule, down in Chandler, Arizona. You want to talk about attention? You want to talk about relationship building? The dead period is very real, coming up here January 30th. And then the coaches, after, I think, that February stretch, the first Wednesday in February coming up is the signing day presser we'll have coverage of. But then there's kind of some quiet time for the college football world, allegedly, right? There's quiet time for this coaching staff. April 15th is the next time coaches can get out on the road. So what's Nebraska do? They send a full house down to Chandler, Arizona. You got to love Nebraska's strategy. Got to love what they're doing. That's both coordinators on the offensive and defensive side. O-line coach, that's Uncle Donnie. Wide receiver, running backs, tight ends, defensive back, and linebackers. I don't know how big Dominic's house is. I don't know that anyone's doing any slumber parties, Harbaugh style, but they're making their presence felt. And Nebraska's making that statement not only to be genuine with their relationship build, but Rule already burned his in-home. And that was the first visit he made and took, was to get down there and get some FaceTime with Dylan Raiola. I love what Nebraska's doing. Going to be a tough fight, but Nebraska's going to do everything in their power. Here's what I think. I think the timeline, by some reports, and On3's national guy has put some work in on this story, and I know Brady Oltmans from Hail Varsity will have some more on the Raiolas coming up, and we'll let Brady talk about that in an hour. But it's so important for Nebraska to make that first impression. They did with the head man. They're making more of an impression with their staff. They're making a third impression with, well, it wasn't charity. We think Donnie Raiola is a hell of a good offensive line coach. We kept him. Things mesh and match. That family never hurts. And then you have the timeline here in March, and that's kind of where you narrow it down if you're Dylan, probably, with where you want to go. And what Nebraska doesn't have that the rest of these suitors do right now is track record, at least what the here and now has been the last several years. But what Nebraska does have is rules track record, and that's about as good as it gets in college football right now, that he's back from the NFL. So while the on-the-field wins, Elijah, haven't happened, you at least have a guy that has done it when he's been in college not that long ago.
And what else do you have? But, I mean, you're the school that this kid grew up rooting for. Like, let's not discount that factor in terms of this recruitment here. And I guarantee there's somebody at home that's sitting here listening to this show right now saying, why are we still talking about this kid that's just a junior in a high school? He's probably not even coming to Nebraska. And let's reset for you real quick. This isn't just some player. This is, by some recruiting services, the top player in the country, by most, at least the top quarterback in the country for next year's cycle. And if Nebraska is able to get a guy like Raiola, who, what we know about these guys is they like to commit early. Usually before your senior year, if you're one of those top 10 guys in the country, you're going to recruit before your senior year, get some stress off your plate before that senior year, and then get off to college, usually as an early enrollee after that first semester of your senior year. You get off and you get spring football, and you hope to walk into a starting role by your freshman season on campus if you're one of those top guys in the country. So Nebraska needs to get boots on the ground in Arizona right now to make sure that you're building relationships with the full staff, because not only is this about your quarterback, this is about the future of your entire program. Just when you look at the type of pull that the number one quarterback in the country has for a recruiting class, how many guys are going to sit there and go, well, I want to play with him, or, well, if it's good enough for the top player in the country, it's good enough for me. I want to go to Nebraska. Nebraska, if they can pull Dylan Raiola in this 2024 class, I think it opens up the potential for this being the best recruiting class. And no, I said recruiting class, not team, not collection of talent, but the best recruiting class on paper that Nebraska's had in their history. That's what's at stake here with Dylan Raiola. So they're getting all the assistant coaches on the ground, because not only is this about your offense, this is about your team as a whole. There's going to be linebackers that say, you know what, I want to go play for Nebraska if they have the number one player in the country. There's corners that say, well, if we have the number one player in the country, those other quarterbacks are going to be testing me all game long, and I get a chance to go make a play. It has ripple effects throughout the whole team. So it's good to see all 9 guys, because Nebraska understands what type of guy Dylan Raiola is for them. That might not be the case for Georgia, you know, or USC, that the number one player in the country is going to have that kind of pull. But at a place like Nebraska, with where you've been over the past couple seasons, a guy like Dylan Raiola has that kind of pull in terms of bringing in the talent and potentially turning your program around.
Residual effect, right? You said ripple, residual. Not only if you could land him, but also what's the domino effect, the fallout. Well said there, as that's what Matt is shaking his head with at home, no doubt, listening to your take on that. I think Nebraska can maybe, and I don't have any inside information. I think they can do enough to woo and win a commitment based on the relationship, based on trust, based on faith, based on we think this will happen. And I think they can make an imprint because of that family connection, not only with Donnie, but also the Nebraska connection with Dom. I think Dom's dying for his son to come to Nebraska. I think Dom's dying for Nebraska to get back to being, as he called him, a sleeping giant. But wake the giant up. And I think Nebraska can get an early yes, and then show some progress next year to confirm and solidify that, all right, leap of faith, so to speak. You know what you have in SC. You know what you have in Oregon. You know what you have in Georgia. Okay? Who am I leaving out? That's really the top 3 aside from Nebraska. It's those 4. Right. It's those 4 teams. It sounds like that's who it's coming down. And right now on the field, one of these things is not like the other. Okay, but listen, it's beyond a incredible sell job for a 1974 Gremlin. Okay, It is really about the connection, and Rule's incredible at this. He's persuasive, but it's not smoke. At least that's not what recruits and parents say. And you can go back to 3 teams ago. It sounds like he's the same guy. Do you trust his plan? Do you trust his blueprint? And, in Raiola's interview with On3, I mean, making his kid a better dude and then winning ball games. Those are kind of A and B, or 1A and 1B when it comes to the priority of getting a program chosen. Are you going to win ball games at USC? Yeah. How are you going to transition into the Big Ten? Time will tell. Are you going to win ball games at Oregon? Sure. Where are you going to be, and what will the Pac-12 be at Oregon? Georgia, you've cranked out 2 national championships. You have 1 loss in 2 years. And you have elite talent around you. The question is this: do you want to go to ready-made, or do you want to be a program changer or someone that kind of resurrects that once powerful giant that's been sleeping?
I mean, you have a chance at Nebraska to go down in the lore of school history, being the guy that takes Nebraska from what they were to what they could become. That's what you have on the line at Nebraska. And you mentioned Dominic Raiola and his influence in this recruitment, and I guarantee Dominic's talking to Dylan about that, saying, you know what you can do at Nebraska? You can go make it the Raiola school in terms of what I did there, what you could do there, what your little brother could do there, what your uncle's doing there right now. Like, the chance of what you can do with the Raiola family name is greater at Nebraska, but I think you also have to take into account that Dom's a guy that played at Nebraska and went and played in the NFL, and I think he understands, at least from listening to him speak, he understands that this is Dylan's recruitment and Dylan's recruitment first and foremost. It's not about what Dom wants, it's about what Dylan wants, and I think Dom's going to pass along and say, you know what, from my point of view, I'd like you to go to Nebraska. And I know you have interest there, but I think he's also going to sit there and go, you make the choice that's right for you, because this is about more than my playing career and the legacy I left. This is about the legacy you're going to leave, so go leave the legacy where you want to leave. I think that's something to remember here. Is this is not Dominic telling his son where to go to school. That's not the read I get at all. This is Dominic saying, man, I love Nebraska, but you need to do what's right for you.
Totally agree. There's a want, and yet it's the son's choice. And who's going to make the best impression? There's going to be family input for sure, and we'll see where Nebraska's at. Though, that Nebraska is not going to be caught sleeping. Nebraska is not going to be active. Nebraska is not going to be anything but in this fight, because they'll be dogged about it. And one more point about this all right, why is it going to be better this time? There's a high level of respect from Papa Bear, from Dom, and the guy running the show now. Beyond Rule, there's the Trev Alberts factor, and that is very important, because, listen, Trev's made some tough decisions. He got his guy. Didn't take no for an answer on that. And again, this is all hope and projection. But when you look at quarterbacks that are that highly ranked, there's a lot of positions you can misstep on. Don't always know how an offensive or a defensive lineman will turn out. What about a running back or the skill guys? Don't know. But the quarterbacks, more times than not, are on the money, as in they have the tools and the skill set to be a difference maker in a program, and they're as good as advertised. Do they go on to win a Heisman? Not always. Do they go on to the NFL? A lot of times they're in a camp or beyond, or they're drafted high, right? I mean, those quarterbacks are they're so studied and poured over that if you're in that top echelon of quarterbacks, be it dual threat or pro style, you're usually going to do pretty good things, or at least get a shot in college and beyond. How does it shake out? Don't know, but Nebraska is not scrimping on sending the house. The onslaught, the attention, and again, not just the head coach, not just the offensive coordinator, but the entire staff making their way down there to Arizona is pretty impressive. Meanwhile, Coach Rule, Elijah's been hammering the 500-mile radius for 2024, and Nebraska is going to be in at least good position with some of the following players. You've got Ryan Wingo. He is a big-time wide receiver. I think Rivals has him as the 6th best receiver overall. Coach Rule, I don't know if he was at Handyman's or wherever on West Cornhusker, or West O, I should say.
I think he's in
but
St.
I'm
Louis.
thinking that was a St. Louis Arch yesterday that he tweeted out. So Nebraska, again, with that 500-mile radius theme, seeing Ryan Wingo. Checking in on Andrew Sprague, offensive tackle out of Rockhurst. Devin Sanchez out of Houston. You have the number 3 defensive lineman out of Lee Summit, Missouri. William Nawari, defensive lineman, and the who's who of the SEC is all over him. And then you have a trip to Iowa. Grant Bricks, 6'6" offensive tackle out of Logan, Iowa. Checking in on him. We'll have more on Coach Rule's travels and Dylan Raiola. What's the likelihood Nebraska can keep chopping wood with him? We'll check in with Jacob Padilla next on a Friday at Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Friday edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Jacob Padilla is with us. You at the stadium, man? Where you at?
I am. Had Fred,
I think you're muted,
Fred
bud.
Herbert press conference this morning and decided to stick around for a high school game tonight. So don't really have anywhere to go. I figured I'd come work in the press box.
Nice. Good work. Do you have to crawl up, or they let you? I'm kidding. Well, good. You're just hammering away. Good to spend time with Jacob Padilla. Find him on Twitter at @JacobPadilla_. Jacob, we'll get to hoops in a minute, but want to get your take and reaction to Nebraska and kind of their full force heading down to Chandler, Arizona before the dead period, and handicap your thoughts on Raiola and Nebraska and how that relationship's growing, this race to be relevant for Nebraska. We know the family history, but we also know the other programs that are in hot pursuit for the 5-star quarterback.
Yeah, ultimately, Dylan's going to have to decide what's most important to him. That's the thing about this recruiting. You never know, as those of us on the outside trying to follow this stuff and figure out, all right, who wants to go where, what kind of chance do they have. You never know what ends up being the most important factor for these kids. That's why recruiting is so volatile and hard to predict at times. But seems like Nebraska is certainly doing everything they can to make sure that he knows how much they want him to pick Nebraska, and trying to make him comfortable with the program as a whole, with the coaching staff, with what he'd find if he does choose Lincoln. Obviously, he knows quite a bit about the program with his dad there, and I think ultimately, Dominic would like for his son to go to a winning Nebraska program. Like ideally, that would be. I think that, but it's Dylan's choice ultimately. He has to decide: does he want to go to one of these powerhouse programs and kind of live that life and have a chance to win national championship, whatever, or does he want to come to Nebraska, where obviously different expectations, different point in their program, but if Matt Rule and his staff do kind of get this thing back on track, he could be an important part of turning that around, and that in itself, maybe he never wins a national championship at Nebraska, but that, like, helping Nebraska get back into contention for one of those could go a long way and could be something that he finds truly meaningful. So all that type of stuff, are things that he has to decide, all right, what's important to him. And I think Rule and company are doing everything they can to make sure that, like, if he does pick Nebraska, like, he knows what he's getting.
Jacob, what's your take on Omar Hales hopping on Madden and going and playing Dylan Raiola? And I guess as a follow-up question, if you were in that position, if you were recruiting a high schooler, what's your game of choice?
And I think that's where it's smart that Matt Rule has hired so many young people that can relate.
Well, as somebody who's about that age, I can say if I was getting recruited and someone wanted to run some duos in Modern Warfare with me as a recruiting pitch, like, I'm all for that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just another way to build a relationship. It's just another tool. So same as texting, same as calling, same as these visits. Just another way to stay in touch, to kind of connect on a level with a recruit where they enjoy and find value in. So it's smart to have people that are connected like that are interested in those types of things. And we'll see. Hopefully, I don't think he necessarily has to let Dylan win. That's probably going a bit too far there, but it is kind of cool seeing just the relationship continuing to build. And they're certainly not shy about advertising the lengths that they're going to, both for him and for a lot of the other recruits that they're chasing.
Jacob, more football in the Metro, just up the road from you. You got Christian Jones, 2025 prospect from Westside, getting the SC offer today. Carter Nelson, tremendous talent. Sparty is more involved in the Metro. And then comment also, third name today, Anthony Rizak, just a great ball player from Westside. Iowa State in to see him. Shieldhouse, I think their OC was by. It just keeps on growing, and it's been a good area for a lot of years, but it seems like it's as ripe as it's ever been from a talent standpoint in Omaha here the next couple of years.
Yeah, just I think continuing to see the results of the years of improvement, effort, money, resources put into the kind of the infrastructure, the youth levels, the high school levels, just growing the talent level, making sure kids all over the place have opportunities to go get in extra work, to get in extra training, to learn from people that have been there. And it's paying off now with the rise in potential Division I players. And it's been cool to see. Definitely, like Rizak and brother Teddy as well is a really good athlete as well. It'd be interesting to see kind of what level both those two settle in at. Anthony's so much fun to watch at that quarter as a dual threat quarterback. Just a phenomenal player, and Teddy's versatile as well. Can play both sides of the ball, multiple positions, both pretty similar athleticism, and it's really athletic family. We saw what older brother Dom did there. So, and Carter Nelson, just freak athlete. I coached against him in basketball. I think he only dunked on us twice. So there's a lot to like there for him, certainly out there in Ainsworth, obviously playing a little lower level. Hard to judge the production, all that type of thing from that. But the fact that he is attracting all this attention from these power programs, I think shows how talented he is. So, I think we're going to continue to see the steady stream of coaches come through the Metro, come through the state. And obviously Nebraska is going to be there as a big part of that, as we've seen.
Jacob Padilla is with us here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. And Jacob, I'll just pose the question to you. Dare we talk Husker basketball and what they face in the next couple of games? It just seems like a season that had so much hope has been derailed so quickly.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Just a team already that had very little margin for error, now losing two of your four best players. It just really puts a damper on everything that the progress that they've made. And now you're kind of in danger zone here where I think it was good to see the progress made. You kind of like the direction that the program was heading. And now without those guys, you got to find a way to stay afloat, not to lose all that, to kind of go into a tailspin, have the wheels fall off. Like that's now the task in front of Fred Hoiberg. I wrote in my column this week on Wednesday on HailVarsity.com, just kind of how I'm recalibrating expectations, the way I view this team. And down the stretch here, I think the way to watch this team is to really try to appreciate the time left that Sam Griesel and Derek Walker have in Nebraska uniforms. Obviously very different journeys to get to this point, but two guys that have given everything they have to this program. Sam coming back as a hometown kid this year. Derek over 4 years, getting better and better. So that's one thing. Like, you got 10, 11, 12, however many games left of those guys in Husker uniforms. So we'll see kind of what they can do stepping forward, trying to adjust as defenses adjust with Vanamel and Gary, and how they can impact winning. But the other thing is the young guys, the guys that are going to be back next year. What do guys like Jamarcus Lawrence and Denham Dawson show? We obviously saw Lawrence play well, hit 4 threes, had a couple of really nice passing reads, and 3 assists, just 1 turnover in his first start against Northwestern. You need to see that continue, to see him kind of, because we've seen flashes of from Dawson, from Lawrence, from Wilhelm Breidenbach. Even had that short stretch where he played really good basketball. He's struggled again recently. You got to Fred Hoiberg has to figure out what he has coming back, so that he can shape the plans moving forward and figure out what he needs to go find in the offseason to add to this program to replace the guys that they're losing. And so that's kind of what, like, these guys are going to have to play. There's nobody else. So we're going to see Lawrence play in 30 minutes. We're going to see Dawson out there 20, 30 minutes, depending on how the game's going, because there's nobody else to put in for them. So they need to take advantage of that and show, like, hey, we've kind of been towards the back end of the rotation here. We're getting spot minutes here and there, but with these last 10, 12 games, show that they can be parts, like important parts, rotation players for this program moving forward beyond this season.
Jacob, one of the things we discussed yesterday was that future of Hoiberg, and you mentioned the offseason, but is it a guarantee that Fred Hoiberg gets another year? I mean, one of the things we talked about yesterday was the fact that these next 10 games feel pretty important for the future of Fred Hoiberg, and I just want to get your take on what the hot seat situation is looking like for Fred Hoiberg as it stands right now.
Yeah, it's really tough with the injury situation. I think the trajectory that the program was on, he had was going to end up earning another year, because he had done everything that Trev Alberts wanted to see. Get him at least one more year. Now the question is, would he be able to do it again? Again, a lot of the program's success were kind of the upperclassmen that aren't going to be back next year. So that's a lot to replace. So it's not like Hoiberg had saved his entire tenure here, but I think he had earned himself at least another year to see what he can continue to do. But now we've got the injuries, and kind of the train's in danger of falling off the tracks. So that's, I think, if we continue to see them be competitive, if they find a way to scrape out a couple of these wins, they're in it down the stretch of most of these games. Obviously, there'll probably be a few ones that get rough on the road against the better teams they'll face, but play good basketball at home, continue to play hard, scrape out a few wins here or there. As long as you can kind of continue to see that, I think Trev Alberts will lean towards giving him at least one more year to see what happens. But if the wheels fall off and it starts to look really bad, that's kind of when you start to wonder, well, what's going to happen here? Because we've seen in the past when things have gone poorly for other coaches at Nebraska, like, it gets to a point where, like, what are we doing here? You can't really try this again. So that's kind of where they're at right now. He's got to keep this thing together, keep the guys playing hard, keep the guys playing together, and try to find some solutions to the problems that these injuries have provided.
Jacob, I want to keep you for just a couple of minutes on the other side, if that's okay, to hit the prep weekend. Some big ball games in the Metro and in Lincoln tonight, and of course, try and sift through as we get closer to district action and then ultimately state. Can you hang on real quick?
Yep.
All right, good stuff. Jacob Padilla is posting up, calling for the ball on the 6th floor of Memorial Stadium. He was down checking things out, of course, covering Hoiberg and company before they took off for Maryland. We'll have more thoughts on Nebraska and the recruiting weekend. Just one official visitor right now that'll be in this weekend, but Coach Rule's been around that 500-mile radius. The rest of his staff, well, I think they got some suntan lotion out down there in Chandler, Arizona. More with Jacob Padilla. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Friday edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Jacob Padilla. A couple more minutes on the other side here to talk high school ball. And Jacob, some really entertaining games on the docket tonight and tomorrow What's on your radar this evening? Where are you going to be posted?
A couple of fun ones down in Lincoln tonight. I believe you're going to be on the call for Lincoln East at Lincoln Southwest. Spartans look bounce back from a tough showing against Lincoln Southeast on Tuesday. A Southeast team that may be starting to kind of figure some things out after a slow start to the season. We knew they were talented, but got off to a bit of a slow start. So if they continue to get better, that makes the city race all that more interesting. But I think I'm going to head over to Kearney at Lincoln North Star because I haven't seen either one of those teams play. They're both having pretty solid seasons. Some young guys on both teams. Obviously, North Star has the Twin Towers inside of Brennan Clemens Jr. and Sam Linnell. So looking forward to that one tonight for sure.
Jacob, as we get into the last month of the prep season, now's about the time whenever you want to start getting hot if you're a high school basketball team to get into districts and get into state going the right way. So you kind of mentioned one team with Lincoln Southeast that's getting hot at the right time. You seen any others that are getting hot and you think might be a little bit worrisome if they end up in your district come March?
I'm not sure if I've seen anybody necessarily hit any kind of real hot streak. I guess Lincoln Pius X has certainly found its stride after a slow start. They handed Omaha Scott their first loss of the season on Tuesday. I was at that one. Impressive showing there. Shot the ball really well to win that one. But I think in general, it's kind of the same teams that we've felt are kind of there in the chase. Omaha West Side is kind of interesting in that they just got Ricky Lofton back, transfer from Omaha South, who tore his ACL at the end of last season. Just a couple of games under his belt now, so he's still kind of feeling his way back. But between CJ Mitchell continuing to kind of find his game, coming back from the injuries, Caleb Benning obviously got off to a slow start with the football injury coming into the year. With those two, plus Ricky Lofton kind of getting back into the mix. As a team that could be better come the end of February than it is now, late in January, in terms of just kind of looking different than what we've seen to this point. So that's a team that just lost to Omaha Creighton Prep in that rivalry on Tuesday. Westside's got to figure something out on offense, got to shoot the ball a little bit better than they have, but they certainly have the pieces. And again, adding a player like Lofton, who was a pretty solid player before his injury, could change kind of the picture a little bit for them at least.
Jacob, a thought where kind of your top three right now are with the Metro and Omaha, and give me your top three in Lincoln.
Well, WS 1, Gretna 2,
yeah.
And number 3, I don't know. It's probably someone between West Side and Miller North and Creighton Prep. They've all beaten each other at this point. So it's probably one of those three who I don't know at this point, because West Side beat Miller North and then Prep beat West Side and Miller North beat Prep. So it's kind of, again, beating each other up there. It really, like, after the top two in the Metro, I think Omaha looks quite a bit like Lincoln is right now. Lincoln doesn't have a Bellevue West, but all those teams are beating each other, and it seems like it's a different team on top of the pile every week. Again, Lincoln East had the best record among all those teams, and then they go and lose by 19 to Southeast, who had the worst record of the group. Southwest, we've seen them get some really good wins, but then they've also struggled. Like, I honestly, do you have any idea how you would rank the teams in Lincoln at this point? Because I don't. Right
now, I think Lincoln High is up there, and it changes. Like, you have teams move into the rankings and then get knocked out by the teams just outside the rankings. I think, like, from a danger standpoint, I think Southeast, if they – and they've done this early in the year, it was turnovers and finishing games. Well, they've started doing that. And they kind of got things righted when they had a pretty impressive win at Pius. Pius has picked it up, as you've mentioned. I have not seen East yet this year, but I'm really anxious to see their squad tonight, because they're going to have to control tempo against Southwest. And as far as like just talent, like roster, Southwest is a major league wow. I mean, they've got young pups that don't play young, and they're really, really good. I mean, they could really get hot, and then just from a depth and a talent standpoint, Southwest could put a monster run together. But I think East does a great job of doing the little things and sharing the ball, and they can hit from downtown. I think Lincoln High is super athletic. And to your point about North Star with their bigs, I mean, Clemens is fantastic. So if
Clemens and San Liddell, I've got a chance to see them a couple of times this year. Whenever they're both hitting on all cylinders, which it feels like they've been doing more recently, that's a very, very tough team to go beat.
I mean, I'm going to probably go Lincoln High, East, and Pius right now if I'm ranking this week.
Yeah.
But Southeast is knocking on that door.
Yeah, North Star is the last one of that group that I haven't seen yet, so I'll kind of check them off the list tonight. See basically everybody once. So, and I'd be curious to see how East kind of deals with Southwest length. Obviously, they're kind of guard-oriented team where they're five mans, like 6'3", and 4 guards around him. They rely so much on the two Carters there at Mick and Templemeyer. One of those guys gets hot, they'll have a chance to win any single game. If they both get hot, then they're a really good team. But Southwest, again, with that length, with the zones they can switch out and throw out there, might be tougher to get kind of those shots off both around the rim and from the perimeter. So that's kind of an intriguing matchup. That's the one that I originally I was thinking I wanted to go that one, but I was like, well, I haven't seen either one of these teams. I've seen both of them play once already, so I wanted to mark a few more off the list. But it's going to continue to be fun. Again, I think it's wonder how many of these teams we're going to. We'll see how kind of districts play out, and be curious to see how many of these can crack that 8 down at PBA.
No, exactly, and I mean it's awesome. I mean it's elbow to elbow Fridays and Saturdays in high school gyms, and it's just a great atmosphere night in and night out. Jacob, enjoy your night. Thanks for giving us a few minutes to hit some prep hoops, some recruiting, and, of course, Husker basketball. Enjoy your weekend, bud.
Yep, always fun talking with you guys.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. There he is, Jacob Padilla, with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine at Jacob Padilla. My rankings are subject to change.
Well, I feel like if you ask anybody who covers high school basketball in the city of Lincoln, they'll all have a different top 3. Because I think mine right now is probably Southwest, North Star, and Lincoln High. But then Southeast over the next week or so could, I think, realistically come and overtake any of those 3 teams based on how they perform. And don't sleep on Lincoln Northeast either. They've had a couple good wins under their belt.
Northeast was right there against Bell West. I mean, they were right there, and then Bell West did what they did in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, it was a 3-point, 4-point ball game, and at times Northeast had the lead. Man, it's blurring together for me. Was that back started January? I think it was started January. Or
sounds right.
Right towards the new year. So we'll wind down this first hour. Bill Doleman waiting in the wings. A little bit after 5, Brady Oltmans. More on Nebraska and their full court press on Dylan Raiola. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, your way to get involved with Hail Varsity is either via StreamYard on Twitter, email, or Facebook. Can also check out Hail Varsity YouTube channel. We're streaming the show that way with video. Can always hear across the Hail Varsity Network, different stations that carry us. Omaha's ESPN, Lincoln's ESPN, Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, and Columbus. So we appreciate you wherever you're hearing us. Tuning in to Hail Varsity and podcast different segments of the whole show for you. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and we'll get to more steak and beer wagers coming up towards the end of this second hour.
Hey,
Brady Oltmans coming up and Bill Doleman on the way.
I should note that we're even thus far in the NFL playoffs. I took wild card weekend. You've taken divisional weekend. So this one's for the best of 3. And then I guess we may have to tie with the Super Bowl depending on who wins this week. But I'm looking forward to getting some steak and a beer bets locked in because both these games this weekend, not to dive too deeply here, feel like they could be toss-ups. I feel like I would not be surprised no matter what the Super Bowl matchup ends up being. That's why I'm so excited for Sunday.
It'll be good. I don't know that the public wants to see San Francisco, Kansas City again. I think San Francisco. Well, I don't. You can take them or leave them with their fascinating Mr. Irrelevant pick. I mean, there's always Chiefs love in this town and across the state because of the vicinity, the locale, and Mahomes is fantastic. There's a huge push for Cincy, which would be fun. And I don't know that there's a ton of love for Philly except that they have Sue and Stoll and of course, Cam Jurgens. So it'd be cool to have that Husker flavor down in, dare I say, Chandler, Arizona. More Husker flavor, this of the Super Bowl variety. I haven't talked to Mom and Grandma about moving out for a week and making about $50,000 renting out the house. I know Barney was talking about it yesterday. He had a neighbor that was going to get $22,000. I don't know if that's day of or for the week, but it's going to be a party, and you've got the Waste Management Open, and then you have the Super Bowl going on down there. Well,
I've told you, I believe, I'm not sure if I mentioned it on the air, but I was looking at maybe going down to Arizona for the Waste Management Open this year, and then I started looking at Airbnb prices, and I was like, I don't think I want to do that, but I have a buddy living down there. And he said, well, I have an air mattress. You can sleep on the air mattress in my living room. And I said, I'd rather not. And I looked it up, and instead of going to be going to Vegas this spring for like half the price of what it would have cost me to go to Arizona.
I'd fire up the air mattress, man.
But the thing is then you have to buy tickets to the Waste Management Open, too. And then you have to deal with all the craziness that's going to be down there in Super Bowl weekend.
That's why you go. I mean, be part of the craziness.
But look, with the Waste Management Open and with the Super Bowl, like the population of Phoenix, I don't want to say it's going to double, but it might get closer to that. And then you're talking craziness, especially with it being wintertime in Arizona anyway, and the population of Phoenix is already as high as it's going to be all year long. So it's Vegas for me instead of Arizona, and I get to use that leftover money to go hit the casinos.
Let's get you buckled up. Remember to do so. Hands on the wheel, eyes in mind. Straight ahead, the driver has one job. That's to drive a message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. We'll get the Pride of Fairbury's take on Nebraska's full court Arizona press on Dylan Raiola, and more from Bill as we talk spring expectations. That sleeping giant topic. Where's Nebraska at? Are they hitting snooze or not?
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back to you, it's Hour 2 at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, the Pride of Fairbury. Bill Doleman is in, as can find him on Twitter at Bill Doleman. And apparently there's not quite the Matt Rule, Coach Rule hieroglyphics, but F_F was allegedly put on a whiteboard, directed at one of our dudes here for Hail Varsity Radio this week. Professor Bill is in. Pride of Fairbury, are you also in Arizona?
I am not in Arizona. I am actually in Kansas City, though, monitoring, what the crowds are going to be like for the big Cincinnati-Kansas City game this week. I don't know if you heard that that's taking place. So I'm down in KC with a lot of other folks. But where I'm at right now, I'm going to tell you I am on the low end of the demographic.
So they're okay. We'll just
Grandma and Grandpa are here. Lots of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you're telling me
here's what I think.
Later.
I think a lot of grandmas and grandpas who had some inheritance tucked away for their kids are spending it on tickets to go to the Cincinnati game this weekend, and perhaps to get an Airbnb down in Glendale for the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks.
So are you going to just do the trifecta? Are you going to hit Power and Light? Are you going to hit Gate? And are you going to hit Westport?
those are all on the docket. Sure, those are up for visits. Absolutely. Winning Kansas City.
You got to do the Majestic Steakhouse and Jazz Club in the basement. Smoke is optional in the basement, but
Okay.
it's the Majestic's where you got to go get that bone-in steak. It's outstanding.
And then go to Joe's for your barbecue. Joe's for your barbecue.
We'll hit recruiting here because I know you love it, and then we'll get into some NFL and some hoops. But real quick though, you covered Dom at Nebraska. You followed his career in Detroit. And we've kept, Junior on the radar here. Dylan's as good as advertised, and you look at the number of high-profile quarterbacks that typically, when they're rated this high, they go do something somewhere, right? They have that opportunity. But Nebraska, Coach Rule using his first visit out of the gate to go see Dylan, can't visit again. But everybody else on staff with a red zip-up has, and they packed them, and they're down in Glendale right now.
Well, I think Matt Rule, since he can't go back to the Raiola house as a coach, has gone back to Arizona to try to petition for adoption so he can become a member of the family and can visit at every holiday. I mean, I would not put it past Matt Rule and his staff to do something like that. They have been all in. And I do think, and I think we talked about this maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago. Look, I think Dominic's going to let his kid make the decision, but I think that there are some things that Dominic is saying to his son through the media. Talking about how good Nebraska is doing right now in terms of the facilities. So he was effusive in his praise that Nebraska is 5 years ahead of anybody with the facilities being put in. He's had high praise for Matt Rule and his staff and the way they approached them when the opportunity to visit came in. You didn't hear any of that, prior to the coaching change, right? I mean, Dylan Raiola has been on the radar a long, long time, and you didn't hear much from Dom about Nebraska. It was up to Dylan to make the decision. But I'm not saying he's speaking in code to his son, but Dominic has been very effusive in his praise of Nebraska and Matt Rule. I think that speaks volumes. And maybe Dylan decides to go elsewhere. That's fine, but I think Nebraska fans should be heartened by knowing that the effort is being made by the staff to do everything that it can to try to get one of the best ranked players in the country for that class. And, look, I'm not a big recruiting guy, but I do know that typically 4+ and 5-star guys are the ones who earn those numbers. I think of Jadeveon Clowney when he was like a sophomore was a 5-star. He hasn't been a great pro, but he was a great college player, great high school player. It worked out that way. So I do think Dominic is saying a lot of great things that Nebraska fans should, take heart in, whether his son signs with Nebraska or not.
Now, Bill, a point that I made back in hour one, I want to get your take on it, being a guy who's usually pretty anti-recruiting, is that Dylan Raiola, getting a commitment from him could lead to Nebraska being able to attain the best recruiting class on paper that they've had in their history, just with the draw that a number one overall recruit brings to a football program, and especially when you combine that with where Nebraska has been over the past couple of years. It just feels like it'd be a breath of fresh air and a potential completely needed influx of talent for this football team. I want to get your take on that right there. Am I being too overreactive with what the importance of a guy like Dylan Raiola could mean to this football program?
I've said it many, many times on the show, and it bears repeating, but I know everybody listens all the time. Turner Gill is the most important recruit Nebraska football has ever had because he was the player that transferred Nebraska from the 70s into the 80s into the option and what Nebraska became into the 90s. Tommy Frazier was a transformative quarterback because he was able to, establish, the mentality of a winner. He was never a team captain, but Tommy Frazier was a tremendous leader, very, very important. Is Dylan Raiola that kind of player in terms of his skill set and his leadership and his maturity? I don't know. You would think that if his dad played in the NFL and played in Nebraska, he's got some pretty good savvy, much like an Arch Manning, the stock that he comes from. I think that can be somewhat comparable. And I do think that if Dylan Raiola signs with Nebraska, yes, that can be a transformative get for Nebraska in the recruiting game. We still haven't seen what he can do offensively on the field for Nebraska. That remains to be seen if he signs. But you get a 5-star at that position at this stage with this coaching staff, that is incredibly significant. But I'm also going to say, I think that those guys have already created that momentum with the players that they have signed and where they've been able to get them. Getting the kid out of Tennessee a couple of days ago. Remember, all those guys on the 4-letter say nobody wants to go to Nebraska. How are they going to recruit to Nebraska? Well, where's Nebraska been getting players from? 3 guys off a national championship team at Georgia, guys out of Texas, guys out of Tennessee now. I mean, it's been really remarkable how fearless they have been in going anywhere to get the players that they want in their program, and some that are eye openers. Like the speedster out of Texas had no stars, signs with Nebraska, and all of a sudden he's a 3-star. So I think that Nebraska has set the stage for Raiola to give his commitment and not feel the pressure that he's got to be the guy, because there's already momentum with some pretty good players coming in.
Bill, one thing that I'm intrigued to see, it's one thing to go star hunting and wow them with the plan, with the facilities, have the relationship that you trust and feel like, all right, I can be a better student, a better person, a really good football player. Their specialty's always been development, right? Think about pairing, all right, a higher starting point of talent with what they do well anyway, and that's development. That's got to be exciting. I mean, that's what Nebraska did for a ton of years. They got high-level dudes, but they developed the heck out of them because they were really excellent coaches under T.O. and Frank and even Bo. I mean, those guys got good talent, and then they really hit a lot of ceilings with guys, be it 3-stars, or you saw in Sue's case that borderline 5-star. Once he got under Bo, Sue became Sue, right? So think about pairing the talent with the incoming starting point. That's got to be exciting. And I'm not saying these 5-stars, 4-stars, high-level guys are going after tackles, they're going after defensive linemen, they're going after wideouts. Rule's been combing Missouri and the surrounding states the last couple of days. But if you get that combination, that could be pretty big time for Nebraska.
Not only did Nebraska get, players who were 3s and 4s and made them 4s and 5s and, some of the great players in college football history, they also got blocks of granite. Guys who are just hard-nosed, tougher than hell, and they carved them into great players, Guys who may not have been on the radar with anybody else. But Nebraska and that coaching staff saw something in it, much like what Rule says he is doing. I know what I want. I know what the kind of player I want to fit what I want to do. Okay, well, Nebraska has done that for a long, long time. But you also have to keep in mind when you're talking about development, it's not just what the player wants to hear and how good are you going to make me and am I going to get a shot at the league. And Rule talks about that second contract and getting that $5 million deal. Look, moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas want to hear, how are you going to develop my son into becoming a productive young man in college and a productive man once he's done with college, regardless of what his success is on the field? So, Matt Rule's pitch, just like it has been throughout Nebraska history with Tom Osborne, it's the total person program. It's the Dennis LeBlancs and the Keith Zimmers and all of those things that Nebraska put in place ahead of anybody else. Okay, the life skills and all that. When you're talking about development, Nebraska's always been part of that as a total person. So you can sell the kid on where I can get you and how good of a player I can make you. But mommy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, they want to make sure that kid comes to Nebraska or wherever he goes and they develop into a great citizen. And I think that Matt Rule's got a pretty good track record of that based on the loyalty of the guys who are on staff with him.
Bill, when you talk about that total person development, does it surprise you that Nebraska only has one academic All-American over the past decade? This is something we hit a couple days ago, but I want to get your take on it. One academic American over the past 10 seasons. Well, what does that mean to you?
Well, maybe it means that the rest of the country has decided that they need to be a little more, put a little more emphasis on it the way Nebraska did for so many years, and to catch up. What Nebraska's got like 100 more than the second closest team, and that I think Stanford's second or something like that.
Well, I should know.
But in order to be an academic All-American, you not only got to hit the books pretty well, and survive professors like me in the classroom, but you've got to be pretty good on the field too. And they don't just give that out because you get an A in sports writing 250, right? You still got to play pretty well on the field to earn it.
I should note, whenever I make the point of one academic All-American in the past decade, I'm referring specifically to the football team. There's been other academic Americans from other sports.
You're
so
talking pigskin. Bill, thoughts on Nebraska basketball real quick? I know we kind of outlined a week ago what Nebraska could do for the NIT. That's off the table right now, you would feel, with the injuries. But let's talk Trev here. And have you seen enough grit and fight and change for a year 5 for Fred? Because I think we all want to see him back. It just could get real tough here with this stretch, home and away, with how thin they are.
A couple of weeks ago, I said Nebraska had to go 7-5 to get into the postseason. 6-6 wasn't going to get it done. They had to have a above 500 record in conference play. Now you're hoping that they can go 4-5 down the stretch, and that means holding serve on home court and finishing the season with, wins in the teens. That's better than last year. But look, let me take you back to December real quick, and I know we got to wrap up here. Remember, after Nebraska beat Creighton, what did Trev Alberts do? He invited a couple of basketball players to come up to his office, and he gave them black shirts for their great defensive effort. Who were the two guys that came to the office to get black shirts?
Guys that are hurt.
Bandamel and Gary. Trev knows that what Fred Hoiberg was building for this season centered a lot around those two guys. Yes, Derek Walker and Sam Griesel, but those two guys were great additions for Fred. And to have them both gone at this stage of the season for the rest of the year, look, Trev, I think Trev's going to go, look, Fred, I know what you're up against, especially when you lost those guys. Tough year. I'm not sure if they both can come back next year, but
Gary can.
I think Trev had to like what he was seeing and the adjustments Fred made, the fight that this team had. I think people like watching him play, but when you've only got 9 scholarship guys and 9 games left to go in the regular season, I think everybody kind of understands, how the final chapter might get written, and believe that maybe next year will be better.
All right, your picks for the NFL weekend, partner. Are you going Chiefs or are you going Cincy? What do you think about Philly and San Fran?
Well, I think Kansas City should be very thankful that they're at home. I think it's going to have to be their ground game. I don't think Mahomes is going to be able to be as versatile in terms of moving around in the pocket and creating those spectacular plays. All you got to do is lock down Kelsey, and you got a chance to beat Kansas City. And I don't think Cincinnati is afraid of them at all. I think Philadelphia has been the best team all year. Their defense is great. And if I'm Brock Purdy, I don't want to see Ndamukong Suh on the other side of the field. I know it's a great story. So was Case Keenum a few years ago. But at some point, I think it's going to come to an end. I think it's going to be Philadelphia and Cincinnati in the Super Bowl.
The Dave Remington Bowl is what we will title it.
Yeah, And by the way, I can't believe Elijah is still talking after I said he needed to stop with that whole white-on-white uniform thing a couple of days ago.
I haven't said anything today.
No,
I know, but still, at the time, you just kept talking after you said they should wear white. No.
Surrender rights.
I still stand behind it. I still stand behind my statement.
92. Watch the game. All right. Pride of Fairbury, enjoy KC.
All right. See you guys. Go Big Red.
There he is. Bill Doleman with us. We'll check in. Where has Nebraska's offers gone? Brady Oltmans coming up next from Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Working through a Friday, it's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. Big thanks to Bill Doleman. We say hi to Brady Oltmans with us, Hail Varsity staff writer, hailvarsity.com and magazine. More on the recruiting weekend, specifically the visits and then the dead period. Brady, you've been just all over it, man. You've been tracking where the coaches are at. Obviously palm trees and golf courses, and Chandler, Arizona for the staff that's focused a lot of our discussion today. And give us kind of an update here, what you've been working on and what you're kind of hearing and feeling with the Dylan Raiola, the Raiola family situation and Nebraska's pursuit.
Well, Nebraska finds itself kind of in the top 4 as it stands now. It's Nebraska, Georgia, USC, and Oregon. Dylan has spoken highly about all of them for various reasons. Obviously, Georgia being the two-time defending national champions. He likes Oregon and Dan Lanning a lot, coming from that, the Georgia tree and what he's been able to do. And then obviously Lincoln Riley's ability to develop and work with quarterbacks is very appealing to him. But he's also shared a lot of excitement. He likes this coaching staff, this Nebraska staff, the excitement they bring, the personality that they bring. I know Dominique is kind of hands off, but he wants to be the dad and not the recruiting guy in this situation. So Nebraska finds itself pretty much in a really good position. They sent the house today to the Raiola house in Chandler, and that's one thing that I think has been very appealing between this coaching staff and Dylan Raiola is the familial openness, communication-based recruiting approach that they're taking. It's very personal driven, very it's not like a salesman pitch. They're really trying to go on a personal level with it, and I think that's where Nebraska's gained the most ground in the last, say, year since Nebraska last tried to get in touch with him.
Brady, sending 9 assistants to an in-home visit, it seems like a lot. And the way I quantify it in my mind is like either from a business point of view or like, say from a girlfriend point of view. I send 9 assistants for an in-home visit to go sell a girl. Like that's craziness. Like, but from a recruiting point of view, what kind of message does that send to a recruit that 9 assistants are coming and visiting?
It's a priority. Top priority. It means that we will drop everything else, every other place that we're at, because they were in California. A lot of them were in Texas, which isn't that far. I'll grant you that. But they were all over the country before. But to say that they'll converge all of their resources upon one kid in one living room, so to speak, maybe not literally the living room, but they'll put everybody there to give the time, energy, and effort to hear out this kid and to show that he's a big priority for him. Obviously, he warrants it. I mean, he would be the biggest all-time recruit the Nebraska program has ever gotten in, and his dad, has his number retired up in the place. So I think they're trying to meet the importance of the moment with the amount of attention that they're giving him and the amount of people they want to build a connection with him.
Brady Oltmans with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. It's been emphasized not only from Rule, his first visit was to Raiola, but now the staff making their push today down in Chandler, and that speaks volumes. And you outlined just the decision-making process. March around then kind of feels and sounds like the timeline. But Brady, because of the family connection, I mean, the Raiolas, I don't think they're just going to sit around. They're going to visit. They're going to go to Athens. They're going to go to La La Land. They're going to check out. I mean, they've been to all these places anyway, but it's not out of the way to come to Lincoln in February to see Uncle Donnie. And I mean, that in is for real. I mean, the 1-2 punch of Dad, yeah, you're right, hands off, but man, I think he would love it if Junior would find his way to Lincoln. You have Uncle Donnie here, and then you have the fact that Nebraska's done an incredible job genuinely of trying to build this relationship, and the track record speaks for itself as far as guys that came in under Rule at different stops and have had a better life because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think their plan right now is they're definitely going to visit all 4 of those finalist schools. And the indications that I've kind of been given or I've kind of heard is that they're looking into what compliance-wise, what constitutes as a visit to Lincoln. Obviously they have Donovan in as an assistant coach, and it's just, I don't know. It's the NCAA has all those weird rules. So if they were wanting to come up and visit him, I'm sure, you're going to talk ball. If you're a football family, you're going to talk football. You know what I mean? At what point does somebody
where the
in the
lines
corner
blur, right?
Yeah, who in a quarter zip in the corner is like, knock it off, guys? Trying to say you're written in too close to a visit here. So
it's like the administrator at a high school dance in the corner, just waiting.
Yeah, he's shining the flashlight on you, just making sure things don't get too handsy. But it's exactly like that. It's exactly like that. But I think you're right. They're timeline-wise, they really don't have anything settled down, but they want to visit all of them. And I would almost say May, kind of about the time he committed to Ohio State last time. So maybe that's when you start saying, any day now or kind of situation.
Brady Oltmans is with us here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. And Brady, to get away from Raiola, but to keep it with recruiting today, we had USC offering Omaha West Side athlete, most likely linebacker, Christian Jones. And Jones is shaping up to be one of those top guys in the class of 2025, not only from the state of Nebraska, but from the Midwest as a whole. So tell me what you know about Jones and tell me what an offer from USC means.
Oh, man, he's got a nose for the ball. He's got a good motor. He's got great instincts. I remember talking with some of the West Side coaches earlier in the year, and then after they won the state championship, and then again, just a couple of weeks ago, just trying to get a sense of how the recruiting is going for some of those kids, because obviously you've got not just him, but Rezak and Caleb Benning and all of them. And he's one that I think you're going to see a lot more attention shown on with him being a sophomore. I think people see the promise on the film, but they're really waiting to see him pop a little bit more, maybe with another year. But he's a guy that's, sky is the limit. I think he's kind of the guy that the type of recruit that Nebraska would want to keep in. And obviously there were a litany of schools in Lincoln, Omaha area this entire week, and there were a lot of offers made, a lot of visits from a lot of schools. But if a Husker fan wants to get nervous, go ahead. But Nebraska was also in all of those schools this week too. So if that makes you feel any better.
Brady, Coach Rule spending time in Missouri. Missouri has been an incredible state for Nebraska historically. When you think of Steve Warren, Mike Rucker, just to name a couple of guys, Grant Wistrom, obviously. But the 500-mile radius, a focus for Rule and his staff. Ryan Wingo, stud wideout from St. Louis, that kind of kicked things off. You've got a couple of offensive tackles and bricks out of Logan, Iowa, and Rockhurst's Andrew Sprague, also a 6'8" offensive tackle. And then you have a Lee Summit prospect, Williams Nawari, third-ranked defensive lineman overall. These are all 2024, 2025 guys. And tell me a little bit here, kind of the pulse you have with how these visits have gone, the offers. Nebraska spending a lot of face time everywhere, including the 500-mile radius.
Well, and the thing that jumps out about the entire area is they like good athletes there, but the linemen stand out. I know Andrew Sprague he's been to Lincoln. I think he actually got up here earlier this month or shortly around that time. I remember seeing him post something on Instagram. A lot of excitement for it, and obviously Rockhurst is that's a pretty good athletic school, in Kansas City
traditional
area.
Power, yeah. I mean,
yeah. And then I talked, earlier this month, maybe it was back in December, with Lee Summit head coach, and talk about Williams, and Will and what he's able to do. And that coach just says that straight up, he might be the best athlete in the state of Missouri, and maybe even, and throw in Kansas as well. Certainly the KC area. Just based upon what he does. I mean, he's a great body. He's a huge defensive lineman that you can move around. He can play on the edge if he wants. He can come out of a 2-point, or he can just, belly up to the center and push him around. And looking at him on film, he certainly can. So, Rule likes his speed guys and guys outside. And I think they have a well-versed knowledge in doing that. If they like a guy on the outside, I'll trust them on that. But then you look at some of those interior linemen, guys like those two, those really stand out to me. And having, kind of seeing their social media presence and talking with their coaches, I think Nebraska has a chance with both of them.
Well, with Williams, Nawari, I mean, Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, SC, Oregon, but Nebraska still part of that conversation because of their attention, correct?
Yeah. They like people in the building, not to say that any of those other schools that you mentioned aren't in the building, but their Rhule and his coaching staff are really trying to get out there and say like, hey, we just got here. We haven't even coached a snap yet, but we're willing to be in your living room and talk to you multiple times in order to get you here because we see a vision and we want to convey that to you. So I think I'd be a little surprised if they didn't continue recruiting those guys heavily into this year.
With this full court press we're seeing from Matt Rhule and staff in recruiting here early in their tenure at Nebraska, do you think that's part of the reason why we're seeing some of these Midwestern schools dip their toe into the state of Nebraska and come in here and offer some kids? Or are they feeling the pressure of Matt Rhule coming to their state and taking kids from under their nose?
I think that might be a component of it. I wonder if another component is they see how, national the Nebraska recruiting arm is now. And they want to think maybe they can, catch them sleeping or catch them with their foot off the bag a little bit and get in Nebraska and get some of these kids because I guess numbers wise, if you offer and get a lot more kids from Texas than you have gotten in the past, that would ostensibly take numbers away from Nebraska. But I really think that this coaching staff is making it an effort to get the guys that they want from Nebraska. I don't think that they're going to pull, numbers away or neglect a kid from Nebraska just because they like someone from somewhere else. I think there are good players in Nebraska. Other schools want to get in and get those kids, but they're also running up against a resurgence in the brand and how big it is. So I think they want to throw out scholarships and try to get there and at least get their foot in the door before it closes entirely.
Brady, about 30 seconds. Just a quick thought on Husker baseball. I saw some video you posted here of practice number 1.
Yeah, no, this first day that they invited people out there, so I thought I'd jump in and help out, take a little video. Head coach Bolt was talking. They had a couple players talk with us. They're just excited to get out there before the cold really got to them. But, I mean, first games are coming up in February, man. It's baseball season's rolling around, and I can't be more excited for it.
Brady Oltmans. Follow him at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. Read him, HailVarsity.com. Plenty more with recruiting. Brady, thanks for the time.
Appreciate you guys.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And it is steak at a beer time as we dive into some NFL. Of course, both games you can hear locally on ESPN Lincoln Sunday. Kansas City and Cincinnati, San Fran and Philly get things rolling. Tight spreads, and Kansas City not good as a favorite. Cincinnati's been dynamite against the spread, 21-5, and meanwhile you have just a death wish out there, frankly, if you're a Niners fan and you're caught on camera. The Rocky statue is wearing a San Francisco T-shirt, correct, Elijah?
It was last night. Mm-hmm. So there's a picture out there online right now of that Rocky statue with it's a 49ers shirt around the neck. They didn't get it over the arms, so not a full send. I understand being in the city of brotherly love, not wanting to get attacked for defacing the Rocky statue in such a lighthearted way. But those Philly fans are different, so they got it around the head. And
you say
photo
different. You call it different. It's very, very kind. Meanwhile, you have the mayor of Cincinnati asking for a paternity test. I saw this on Barstool for Joe Burrow. Paternity test to make sure he's not, or to confirm that he's the father of Patrick Mahomes. He's his daddy. So it's a little creepy. Let's, without further ado, get into our steak and our beer picks here, Elijah, with some forecast. So here it is, San Fran and Philly. Philly's still favored. And the line right now, is it still around 48.5 for over-under?
For Philly and San Fran?
Yes.
We're looking 46.5 now for Philly and San Fran, with the Eagles favored by 2.5. I got these numbers while we were in the break waiting to talk to Brady, so these are as up to date as they get.
So I think this. San Francisco wins if they're able to get McCaffrey going. It's as simple as that. Run game wise, you're not going to ask Pretty to do much except manage against this Philly defense. I know Philly's been vulnerable against the run from time to time. They know that's how they lose on Sunday. And Philly's just too much. As good as San Francisco's defense is, Hurts is the difference maker with his feet. And I'm going with the quarterback I feel best about. It is Jalen Hurts over Brock Purdy. Shocker there. And you can't sneeze at 70 sacks. And that second wave, that depth in the front seven of Philly's the difference. Give me Philly 27, San Francisco 20. A win and cover for Philly. Elijah, how you feeling on that?
And that's just over. So that's another over for Chris Schmidt here in the Steak and a Beer bets. Just make a note of that one. We'll see how that goes. I also like the overs in this game, just to put it simply. You do have two great defenses going at it, but I think in a game such as this, it's going to come down to, as you said, the quarterback play. And I would also add the playmakers on that offense. Philly and San Fran both have had great rushing attacks, which have opened up the passing attacks for them this year. And Miles Sanders is a back to be feared with Philly, but I look at Christian McCaffrey. You mentioned him. I think he's your difference maker along with Deebo Samuel, what those two guys can do coming out of the backfield. And then you also have Elijah Mitchell as your almost change of pace guy for San Francisco. I think with that almost three-headed monster you can have coming out of the backfield, I really like San Francisco's chances in this game. I know that I know that Brock Purdy has been lightning in a bottle, and you're just waiting for that lightning to run out. But thus far, he's been carried by the talent around him. He hasn't been asked to do that much, and what he has been asked to do, he's been doing very, very well. So I have San Fran taking this one in a tight one, 24-21. San Fran gets a win over Philly in the NFC Championship game.
Good on you.
And I will say I like the over, but just to get us a little difference, I went under in this one. So
you just went different and picked San Francisco on the road against Philly. That's gutsy. What's going to happen, dude, is you're going to have a defense get a takeaway. Either San Fran's defense is going to strip sack Hurts or vice versa. That's going to be your difference. All right, we are...
and I love that defense from the 49ers. I know we give Sue and that Eagles defense a little bit of love. I love the 49ers defense and how they play with DeMeco Ryans as the defensive coordinator, potential Broncos future head coach. So we'll see about that.
You can only wish, right? Off to Kansas City we go. Bill Doleman knows it's a big game, so he's there in person. I can't go against Cincinnati. I know everyone's on Cincy. I know 80% of the money's on Cincy. I know the Chiefs are still favored by 1.5. What can you really do run game wise if you're Kansas City? I know it's been good. I know it's not just an afterthought. I know Andy Reid's incredible. But I just don't like Kansas City's rush defense. I just don't. I like what Cincinnati is dedicated to doing, and that's being solid, if not spectacular, at least recently in the run game. I also know two of the three offensive linemen are out for Cincinnati, so I don't like that. So if Cincinnati can keep it to 2nd and 5, I like the difference makers. I like what Cincinnati can do against the Kansas City defense. And I think they can make someone else other than Kelsey beat them. And Mahomes will play fine, but he ain't going to be himself. He'll do enough to keep him in it. Cincinnati on the road, 24-20, as they go 4-0 against Kansas City. This is the kiss of death. I'm on Cincinnati. The world's on Cincinnati. Elijah, it probably means it's a win for Kansas City.
I'm on Cincinnati too. Just to put it simply, as you said, that rushing attack of the Bengals, I think, is going to be your difference. The Chiefs are going to be forced, I think, to play some light boxes against Cincinnati. That's how Cincinnati's gotten their rushing attack going late in the season. Cincinnati since week 4, I believe, I could be wrong on my number, but it's up there. I believe they have the highest percentage of rushing attack against light boxes. That's either 5 or 6 guys in the box. They lead the league in how often they get light boxes. I think it's going to happen again against Kansas City. You're too worried about T. Higgins and Jamar Chase taking the top off. I think Cincinnati dominates with their rushing attack despite being behind a depleted offensive line, and I think they also pull off a victory. You went unders. I'll go over. It's going to be 35-31. I do believe Kansas City finds some offense. I think Patrick Mahomes maybe he doesn't look like himself, but he still looks like the danger that Patrick Mahomes can be. So I think we're going starting to get the flashes of that, and I think Cincinnati pulls it off 35-31 on the, I guess I was going to say the heels of Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon, but it's on their feet. I think that rushing attack is the difference for Cincinnati, and despite the fact that we have some points, I think that's what gets it done for them. I think they are able to really control the game in the second half with that rushing attack.
This is going to be fun. Going to be a fun weekend of football. We're almost to the tail end of another NFL season with the Super Bowl looming. But, man, you could get an incredible finish as we head off to Super Bowl 57. And excited to see if it is going to be Philly and if it is going to be Cincinnati. That'll be intriguing.
I think you mean if it's going to be San Francisco and Cincinnati. I think that's much more intriguing from my point of view here.
I don't need round 3 of that game. All right, I got one of the greatest there was 30-plus years ago with the Boomer Esiason-led Bengals against Joe Montana and John Taylor at the buzzer.
I believe
that
in destiny. I believe that the destiny is Joe Burrow wins the Super Bowl in San Francisco. They ride that Brock Purdy train until their hearts are broken in the Super Bowl like they should be as a 49er.
We'll wind down a Friday next.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Cast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the whole show or different segments of it. Big thanks to Brady Oltmans with us this hour. Bill Doleman live in Kansas City. And Jacob Padilla talking some recruiting as well. A little bit of Husker basketball and then the prep weekend. Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. Tonight locally over on sister station KFOR, I'll have Southwest and Lincoln East with Hall of Fame coach Jeff Smith. That's on my radar. Basketball locally here on ESPN Lincoln as well, around 7:20 or so. I think North Star and Kearney in action. So should be good times had by all. Tomorrow morning, weekend edition of Hail Varsity. We'll be back at you at 7 a.m. Plenty of recruiting thoughts for Nebraska. Husker baseball in action. Big Red basketball off to crab cakes and basketball country, as they say. We'll rewind with Jimmy Burrow, father of Joe Burrow. Had a great sit-down with him this week. And then Brandon Vogel and the Iron Horse will be with us also in hour 2. Elijah, so have you thought about the Super Bowl menu yet? Have you started thinking about maybe Sunday's AFC, NFC championship game? Have you gone there? Have you thought about expanding the Super Bowl menu? Because we could have quite the get-together, the party, but there's just some staples that need to be on that Super Bowl menu. I'm thinking shrimp cocktail, yes. I'm thinking the St. Elmo's sauce that does peel all of your back hair off.
And you
It's incredible.
You can find the authentic stuff here in town. You don't have to home make it. There's a. I'll mention off air. They don't pay sponsorships with us. I'll mention it off air.
Right. No, I know where you can go get it too. But I mean, it's
no free shout outs on this show, baby.
no free shout out Friday. I think you can go some pizza with our boys at Lazari's. That's a great call. I think if you have a hankering for a teriyaki tenderloin, I'd highly recommend that. Throw it in the air fryer, and then I can even. Maybe we should do a quick video. You do a video of your mac and cheese. I'll do a video of my air fryer wings. Well, the dry rub.
I was going to say last week for divisional, I did do wings. Fried them at home. Did a mango habanero. It was fantastic.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got like a can of mangoes and food processed them up, and then added some habanero hot sauce. It was fantastic. So I think wings are off the menu for me. You mentioned the mac and cheese. I've had a recipe in mind. I've been wanting to do. You got to stick with me here. What you do is you get a rack of ribs, and you arrange them into almost a crown of sorts. You get them into a circle, and you smoke them in that shape.
Okay.
So they're stood up and in a circle crown shape, and then what you do is you make your mac and cheese, and when you serve it, you pour all the mac and cheese inside.
Okay.
And then you're getting mac and cheese onto the ribs, so you're getting that cheesiness on the ribs, which might be a little bit gross depending on your taste. But I think what's better is you get that barbecue sauce running off into the mac and cheese, and you get to barbecue mac from inside the ribs. I've been wanting to try it. It sounds fancy. I think it'd be a better photo op than how it actually tastes. But that's what I'm thinking for my Super Bowl.
Okay. I may see your ribs and raise you short ribs.
Ooh, I may have to add short ribs to my menu.
Depending on what the temperature allows the smoker to be. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 7 on Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in.